Good evening friends, I am Captain Dr. D.K. Ramawat, working as a consultant cardiologist at Ramawat Heart and General Medicine Hospital, Bardmer, Rajasthan, India. Today, last time, we have discussed the diastology, the diastolic dysfunction of the heart. Of course, a complicated chapter, but made easy by me. And now today we are discussing the management of diastolic dysfunction. Total management we will discuss regarding pharmacological devices and surgical also. So be careful, be attentive, open your ears, open your mind and listen carefully. What is the management of diastolic dysfunction? It is very important. So let us start discussing management of diastolic dysfunction. So we have come the diastolic heart failure management. Now the guidelines for management of heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. Apart from adequate blood pressure control and use of diuretics, the main goal of treatment of preserved ejection fraction is to control the risk factors. For example, coronary artery disease, alcohol, smoking, obesity, dyslipidemia, pulmonary diseases, renal diseases, diabetes mellitus, in order to prevent or slow the progression of overt heart failure. We are doing this. And multiple studies have shown that mortality in preserved ejection fraction is mainly due to non-cardiac causes up to 50%. Never forget that 50% are non-cardiac causes in preserved ejection fraction. Now what is the guidelines for management? It is as follows. Number 1, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor number 1. Perindopril in elderly people with chronic heart failure evaluated with preserved ejection fraction. Post hoc analysis at the end of 1 year showed improvement in functional class of 6 minutes walk test in perindopril. Second, mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist, spironolactone, shown to reduce hospitalization but was unable to reduce mortality in patients with symptomatic heart failure with left ventricular ejection fraction more than 45%. With an aldosterone antagonist trial, spironolactone was also associated with increased incidence of hyperkalemia. This drug showed minimal mortality benefit. Then third, the diuretics. It is used to alleviate symptoms of volume overload. In Champions trials, it showed significant reduction in hospitalizations and symptoms improvement. Then the fourth one, beta blockers. Beta blockers may benefit in preserved ejection fraction by reducing the heart rate, decreasing myocardial oxygen demand, and reducing left ventricular hypertrophy. Then the seniors trial showed nebivolol to be beneficial in all patients of heart failure irrespective of ejection fraction, but this trial included very few patients with ejection fraction more than 55%. So the recent update from American College of Cardiology 2017 for treatment of heart failure has given special mention to some therapies. Aldosterone antagonists should be used in selected patients with preserved ejection fraction. Estimated glomerular filtration rate should be more than 30 and creatinine should be less than 2.5 mg and potassium should be less than 5 milliequivalent to decrease hospitalizations. This is class secondary recommendation and level of evidence B. Then routine use of nitrates or phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitors to increase activity or quality of life in patients with preserved ejection fraction has no benefit. This is class 3rd recommendation and level of evidence B. Routine use of nutritional supplements in patients with preserved ejection fraction has no benefit. This is class 3rd recommendation and level of evidence B. An optimal blood pressure target of less than 130 by 80 mm mercury is required in those with hypertension and at increased risk. This is in the stage A heart failure. I will tell you the stages afterwards. So so an optimum blood pressure target of less than 130 by 80 mm mercury is required in those with hypertension at an increased risk, that is in stage A heart failure. That is class 1 recommendation level of evidence B. Titration of guideline directed medical treatment to attain systolic blood pressure less than 130 mm in patients with preserved ejection fraction and persistent hypertension after management of volume overload. This is class 1 recommendation and level of evidence C. The epidemiological trends India versus Western data. In India, the data on heart failure is quite limited. According to data from Sri Chitra Dhunal Institute for Medical Sciences and Technology, and according to data from the India UKRI study, being the first of its kind community-based study, surveyed the rural adult population of 10,163 patients from the Peripheral Health Center of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, comprising of 6 villages from 2008 to 2012. And lastly, third one, the Trivandrum Heart Failure Registry data included 1,205 patients with heart failure from rural as well as urban populations. These three concluded mean age of patients admitted with heart failure was 46.2 years for males. Mean age of patients admitted with heart failure was 46.2 years for males and 51.3 years for females, which is much younger than the Western population where it is 73. The common etiologies for heart failure in Indian science, the common etiologies for heart failure in India since 1949 is with more contribution by hypertension and rheumatic heart diseases. Treatment of preserved ejection fraction involves diuretics for treatment of volume overload and maintaining blood pressure to less than 130 by 80 mm mercury and control of risk factors. None of the other pharmacological agents like ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers and beta blockers have shown any significant benefit in preserved ejection fraction. Now, as the prevalence of risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia increase, the prevalence of preserved ejection fraction is also bound to increase. As the prevalence of risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia increases, the prevalence of preserved ejection fraction is also bound to increase. Since the mortality in these patients is mainly due to non-cardiovascular causes, it is reasonable that apart from symptomatic relief, treatment should be mainly directed at coexistent cardiovascular factors, for example, atrial fibrillation, arterial hypertension, CAD, pulmonary hypertension, and non-cardiovascular factors, for example, diabetes, CKD, anemia, iron deficiency, COPD, obesity. Hence, early detection of these conditions and timely intervention should be the cornerstone of treatment. Treatment part remains a challenging condition with imperfectly understood pathophysiology and difficult diagnosis. I again repeat, treatment part remains a challenging condition with imperfectly understood pathophysiology and difficult diagnosis. Diagnosis requires the combination of signs and symptoms of heart failure, number one, then a preserved ejection fraction more than 50%, then third, objective echocardiographic evidence of abnormal distensibility, LV filling and relaxation. In the year 2016, heart failure has become a preventable and treatable disease. Now, I would like to show you American Cardiology of Cardiology Foundation, American College of Cardiology Foundation and American Heart Association stages of heart failure. Also stages of New York Heart Association functional classification. These are two classifications for heart failure. So first we take stages of heart failure according to American College of American Heart Association. Here you see it is divided into A, B, C and D. In A, at high risk for heart failure but without structural heart disease or symptoms of heart failure. In B stage, there is structural heart disease but without signs or symptoms of heart failure, but LV dysfunction is there because structural heart disease is there. In stage C, again there is structural heart disease, means LV dysfunction with prior or current symptoms of heart failure. Then in stage D, there is refractory and intractable heart failure requiring devices and surgical treatment. It is according to American College of Cardiology Foundation and American Heart Association. Now we come to according to New York Heart Association class. Number one, you will see here that ordinary physical activity does not cause symptoms of heart failure. Is first number or first stage. In first stage, ordinary physical activity does not cause symptoms of heart failure. In second stage, ordinary physical activity results in symptoms of heart failure. In third stage, less than ordinary activities causes symptoms of heart failure. And in fourth and last stage, symptoms of heart failure present at rest also. And he is unable to carry on any physical activity without symptoms of heart failure or symptoms of heart failure present at rest. Now what do you mean by refractory heart failure? Here it is written in stage D, refractory and intractable heart failure. Refractory heart failure means heart failure persistent despite intensive therapy. And intractable heart failure means heart failure resistant to all regular therapeutic measures. Now we have come to another classification of heart failure according to ejection fraction of the heart, left LVF, ejection fraction of left ventricle. Heart failure according to ejection fraction by European Society of Cardiology 2016 heart failure guidelines. Types of heart failure by ejection fraction criteria. First is reduced ejection fraction, reduced heart failure ejection fraction. Second is mid-range ejection fraction heart failure. Third is preserved ejection fraction heart failure. So, if there is heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, symptoms and signs are only, you will see ejection fraction less than 40% by echocardiography. And if you see heart failure, mid-range ejection fraction, here signs and symptoms will be, first will be ejection fraction between 40 to 49%, and there will be elevated level of natriuretic peptides. And secondly, there will be at least one of the criteria written below. For example, relevant structural heart disease, means left ventricular hypertrophy, and or left atrial enlargement, or there will be diastolic dysfunction. Either of these two will be there in elevated levels of natriuretic peptides with, and there will be ejection fraction 40 to 49% in mid-range ejection fraction. Then if it is preserved ejection fraction, you will find ejection fraction more than 50%. There will be elevated levels of natriuretic peptides, and at least one criteria, for example, relevant structural heart diseases like LVH or left atrial enlargement or diastolic dysfunction. Now you have to understand, signs may be present, signs may not be present in early stage of heart failure, especially in preserved ejection fraction and also in patient treated with diuretics. This is important. Signs may not be present in the early stage of heart failure, especially in preserved ejection fraction and also in patient treated with diuretics. Then elevated level of natriuretic peptides means what? It is as follows. We have shown here that there will be elevated level of natriuretic peptide. So it means what? B-type natriuretic peptide more than 35 picogram per ml and or N-terminal pro-B-type natriuretic peptide more than 125 picogram per ml means diastolic dysfunction. Now we are going to prevention of congestive cardiac failure. This is applied for both diastolic and systolic heart failure. To prevent, we have to do early thrombolysis in AMI by thrombotic therapy, then early revascularization by CABG in patients with significant CAD, and early use of ACE inhibitor, ARB, diuretics, beta blockers, mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist, and angiotensin receptor blocker, plus neprilysin inhibitor means ERNI. Neprilysin inhibitor means ERNI, and by dapagliflozin in post-MI patients with congestive cardiac failure and especially with systolic dysfunction. Then fourth, adenosine diphosphate receptor antagonist should be used. Early use of prasugrel and ticagrelor should be used in post-MI patient only, and clopidogrel and aspirin should be used only in post-thrombolysis in post-MI patient with congestive cardiac failure. Now what is the optimum timing of surgery in valvular heart diseases, especially mitral valve replacement and aortic valve replacement and congenital heart diseases? Then better control of blood pressure, lipid profile, obesity, diabetes mellitus, CKD, rheumatic heart diseases, tobacco use, cardiotoxic agents like alcohol and sodium intake should be restricted. Use of CPAP means continuous positive airway pressure should be used to increase ejection fraction and improve functional status in sleep apnea. Then use of omega-3 fatty acids should be there in functional class 2nd to 4th symptoms. Then use of anticoagulation should be there like dabagatran, rivaroxaban, apixaban, warfarin in permanent, persistent and paroxysmal atrial fibrillation and cardioembolic stroke. Now we will go to management of congestive cardiac failure. It was prevention that you understood very well. Now we are going to management, and in management we first take stage 1, stage A. In stage A, you must do better control of blood pressure, lipid profile, obesity, diabetes mellitus, CKD, rheumatic heart disease, tobacco use, and cardiotoxic agents like alcohol and sodium intake should be restricted. Now I am showing you stage B and C. Management of congestive cardiac failure. In systolic heart failure and diastolic heart failure, I will compare both. This systolic heart failure, this diastolic heart failure. In stage B and C, stage A we have already covered. So in stage B and C, now first we take the digoxin. It is useful in systolic heart failure, but not useful in diastolic, except if there is atrial fibrillation you can use. Then second, diuretics, especially thiazide diuretics should be used, and in thiazide you must use chlorthalidone 50 to 100 mg per day. Now in systolic heart failure, diuretics are useful in reduction of hospitalization and symptom improvement. And diuretics are useful in diastolic heart failure in small doses and used cautiously, because it will cause hypovolemia and it decreases left atrial pressure and decreases left ventricular filling pressure and also cause hypotension and pre-renal failure. Then third, inotropic agents including levosimendan and anoximone. These should be used for short term in systolic heart failure, as long term use increases mortality. Then these inotropes are not useful because ejection fraction is normal in diastolic heart failure. Then fourth is ACE inhibitor like perindopril and ARB. In ARB, examples are olmesartan, valsartan, agilsartan. And then you can use Sidmus or Entresto or Ernie, which is called as valsartan plus neprilysin inhibitor. Neprilysin inhibitor is also called sacubitril. Now this Ernie, in place of ACE inhibitor and ARB, Ernie is given. Ernie means this is your neprilysin inhibitor. It is given in place of ACE inhibitor and ARB only. Now these things, in systolic heart failure, it has got major mortality benefit. ACE inhibitor is venodilator, reducing venous pressure. ARB plus neprilysin, Ernie, increases vasodilation and sodium excretion. Risk of hypotension and angioedema is seen in Ernie, means ARB with neprilysin inhibitor. So be cautious. Then in diastolic heart failure, ACE inhibitor useful, lower preload and afterload, improve myocardial relaxation and compliance, showed improvement in functional class and 6 minutes walk test, and ARB not significant mortality benefit. Regarding perindopril, albumin, a vasodilatory drug used in preserved ejection fraction, dosage is 4 to 8 mg per day. At end of 1 year, it showed improvement in functional class and 6 minutes walk test. Now the fifth thing I am taking, fifth point, beta blockers. In beta blockers, you must remember, first, number one, bisoprolol. It is of second generation. It is given in dosage of 1.25 mg to 20 mg orally once daily. Then second, metoprolol. It is of second generation. And third is carvedilol, third generation. And fourth is nebivolol, third generation, given in doses of 1.5 to 20 mg orally once a day. Remember, these beta blockers in systolic heart failure decreases mortality and it increases ejection fraction also, decreases oxygen demand and decreases LVH. And in diastolic heart failure, beta blockers are useful in improving filling because as it decreases heart rate and decreases after load and increases heart size as it is negative inotropics. Then sixth number, calcium channel blocker. Especially useful are non-dihydropyridine and benidipine, a broad spectrum calcium channel blocker. So in calcium channel blocker, in systolic heart failure we use only dihydropyridine but not non-dihydro. So dihydropyridines like amlodipine, it is coronary vasodilator in doses of 10 mg per day and it decreases heart rate. And in diastolic heart failure, non-dihydropyridines like verapamil and diltiazem useful because of positive lucitropic effect which relaxes heart muscle more rapidly and also decreases heart rate. And benidipine in doses of 4 to 16 milligram once a day and it decreases BP and preserved ejection fraction is also decreased. Now you see in beta blocker we will discuss the nebivolol. This is third generation beta 1 adenoreceptor blocker having vasodilatory action via L-arginine nitric oxide pathway whereby nitric oxide production by endothelial nitric oxide synthesis is enhanced. Here 1.5 mg per day given slowly, titrate to maximum tolerable dose up to 20 mg per day. Then regarding benidipine, inhibits cardiac remodeling due to pressure overload at least partly by acting on nitric oxide signaling pathway. Dose in preserved ejection fraction is 4 to 16 mg once a day. It blocks benidipine, blocks all three vascular calcium channels L, N and T which mediate cardiovascular tone. L is L-type responsible for vasoconstriction, N-type responsible for neuroactivation, T-type responsible for renal vasomotor tone and aldosterone. Benidipine inhibits all these three channels and reverses the mechanism of high BP and reduces preserved ejection fraction. Then the eighth point, I would like to discuss ivabradine. Ivabradine is a channel pacemaker current inhibitor, also called sinus node modulator, also called a heart rate lowering drug. So ivabradine channel pacemaker current inhibitor. In New York Heart Association 2nd to 4th with systolic dysfunction, ejection fraction less than 35% in sinus rhythm, in combination therapy or when beta blocker contraindicated or not tolerated, you use sinus node modulator, a heart rate lowering drug, indicated when heart rate more than 70 and ejection fraction is less than 30%, useful in chronic worsening heart failure. I again repeat, useful in chronic worsening heart failure. 2.5 to 7.5 mg BD given. Then in diastolic heart failure, not used as it may cause atrial fibrillation. Ninth point, I will discuss nitrates with hydralazine. Hydralazine is a potassium channel opener and vasodilator also. And nitrates are vasodilators only. Now what the vasodilators do? They decrease mortality. Then vasodilators are sensitive to excessive preload reduction, which will cause weakness, dizziness and syncope. Then 10th point is recombinant brain natriuretic peptide like nasiritide. Nasiritide, a potent venous and arterial venodilator reducing venous pressure. Nasiritide, a potent venous and arterial vasodilator, reduces ventricular filling pressure, but no long-term benefit seen. Then 11th point is toloptan, 30 to 90 mg once daily given. Then 30 mg given once a day for 9 to 9 months with negative motility. This toloptan is arginine vasopressin receptor antagonist. It reduces volume overload and congestion, also reduced immediately and correct hyponatremia and have long-term benefit. Risk of liver failure limits its use for 30 days only. And this drug, toloptan, means arginine vasopressin receptor antagonist, is not useful in diastolic heart failure. Now I will go to 12th point, 12th parameter, endothelin receptor antagonist like bosentan and ambrisentan and phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitor like sildenafil. In systolic heart failure, it lowers pulmonary arterial pressure and dyspnea and increases exercise capacity. Likewise, in diastolic heart failure also lowers pulmonary arterial pressure and dyspnea and increases exercise capacity. Then 13 point, renin antagonist like aliskiren. It interrupts chain of renin-angiotensin system and benefits heart failure. It reduces in diastolic heart failure LVH and benefits heart failure. 14th point, mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist, spironolactone and eplerenone. These are useful in New York Heart Association class 2nd, 3rd and 4th, and in ejection fraction 35% or less, and in refractory heart failure. Here GFR should be more than 30 ml per minute and creatinine should be less than 2.5 mg in men and 2 mg in women, and serum potassium should be less than 5 millicoulomb. But you see, in diastolic heart failure it is not useful. Risk of hypertension is there, and risk of prerenal failure is there, and risk of excessive preload reduction will be there. So minimum mortality benefit is seen. Then 15 point, tablet timetazidine, a cytoprotective drug. It reduces heart failure, hospitalization. And you see the 16th drug, very cigarette, very important, a new drug, a novel oral soluble guanylate cyclase stimulator used in worsening heart failure. Very cigarette used in reduced ejection fraction decreases mortality. The doses are 2.5 mg to 10 mg per day, orally once a day. Then second new drug is amitriptyline with bendavir. It significantly improved failing human mitochondrial function. I again repeat, bendavir significantly improved failing human mitochondrial function, and doses are 0.05 to 0.25 mg per kg per hour IV infusion. Then the third drug, the latest drug is SGLT2 inhibitor dapagliflozin in reduced ejection fraction. It lowers cardiac afterload, and doses are 5 to 10 mg per day. Now in SGLT2 inhibitor empagliflozin, approved in Europe for the treatment of heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. Dose is 10 mg per day. And also second drug Ramogliflozin. Ramogliflozin. Established treatment for heart failure with reduced ejection fraction are associated with reduced mortality, and dose is 100 mg per day. Likewise, this your SGLT2 inhibitor in case of diastolic heart failure, like empagliflozin, decreases cardiomyocyte oxidative stress, and it decreases systemic inflammation, decreases cardiomyocyte stiffness, decreases myocardial extracellular matrix remodeling, decreases heart concentric hypertrophy, and here dose is 10 mg per day. Then 19th, the last newer drug which I am telling you is omecamtiv. Omecamtiv. It is cardiac myosin activator, helps in reduced ejection fraction. Maximum dose is an infusion of 0.5 mg per kg per hour. Now we will go to stage D, management of end stage heart failure. In stage D, here we go for devices. Devices have made patient ambulatory and patient can go home. Cardiac resynchronization therapy, CRT-P and CRT-D. CRT-P means pacemaker are applied in left ventricular and right ventricular, and CRT-D is with pacemaker we apply defibrillator also. So CRT-P and CRT-D with biventricular pacing with end stage heart failure, also used when ejection fraction less than 30% or QRS duration is more than 120 milliseconds and patient symptomatic despite maximum medical therapy, then it is used. Second, implantable cardiovascular defibrillator. As sudden cardiac death occurs due to life-threatening VT, especially VT, VF and ICD. And ICD is useful modality. I repeat again, implantable cardiac defibrillator. As sudden cardiac death occurs due to life-threatening ventricular tachyarrhythmias, for example VT, VF. So ICD is a useful modality in these cases, and it is also used when ejection fraction is less than 35%. Then ventricular assist devices, VAD, used in patients with end stage heart failure and patient made ambulatory by ventricular assist devices. Ventricular assist devices are classified as short-term device and long-term device. Now, what are the short-term devices? They include intra-aortic balloon pump and extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, Impella, Trancor, Rotaflow and Sentry-Mag. Then long-term devices, these are the artificial ventricles, for example Thoratec paracorporeal ventricular assist device. Then short-term devices are used as a bridge to recovery, means in cardiogenic shock, in acute coronary syndrome, in post-cardiotomy and myocarditis, and after PCI or surgical revascularization when acute mitral regurgitation is there or interventricular septal rupture is there. Then bridge to decision. In post-cardiopulmonary arrest, we do bridge to decision, and also we do bridge to bridge in stabilization and implantation of a long-term VAD. Now long-term devices are used as bridge to heart transplantation therapy till donor available, and also we use bridge to destination therapy. When transplantation is contraindicated, we put VAD till death as a palliative therapy. Here you can see devices used in end stage heart failure in stage D, CRT. You can see CRT. So Here in CRT, you use the biventricular pacing. This is right ventricular pacemaker and this is left ventricular pacemaker is used in CRT. And here you can see ICD in life-threatening VT. Automatic implantable cardio defibrillator is used. Here short-term devices are used called extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. Extracorporeal membrane oxygenation is used. This is short-term device. And this is long-term device. Thoratec paracorporeal ventricular assist device. These are the artificial ventricles in this used. Now, in stage D, we are using surgical treatment in end-stage heart failure. First is cardiac transplantation done when ejection fraction less than 20%. Second, dynamic cardiomyoplasty means wrapping a left latissimus dorsi muscle around a dilated and failing heart and stimulating it to contract simultaneously with cardiac systole. This is introduced in 1985. Then third, partial left ventriculectomy, that is known as Batista procedure, also known as heart reduction surgery, introduced by Brazilian cardiac surgeon Batista, and it was introduced in 1994. Then lastly, fourth, total artificial heart. This will eliminate the problem of donor. Here you can see the clock of challenges. The clock of challenges in management of heart failure in India in 2016 and improving them for better heart failure care in India. You can see in challenges, we have got in India lack of data and registers in India. We are lacking that rheumatic heart diseases are not cured timely. So there are persisting rheumatic heart diseases. It is a challenge. Then third challenge is untreated congenital heart diseases. Fourth challenge is increased CAD, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, CKD, and increased physiological ejection fraction for heart failure and reduced ejection fraction heart failure. And fifth challenge is increased iron deficiency anemia. Sixth challenge is inadequate reperfusion of STEMI. Seventh challenge is suboptimal guideline based medical treatment. And eighth challenge is poor follow-up and drug adherence. And ninth challenge is this gaps in evidence for devices therapy. They are used less. Then 11th challenge is increased cost and underuse of intra-aortic balloon pump, mechanical cardiac support and cardiac transplantation. 11th, that challenge is poor financial incentives in India. Then 12th and the last challenge is lack of palliative care in India. The same thing is here. You can see devices and intervention underused and time to treatment concept in acute heart failure not used, and identification of non-responders to current guideline based medical treatment required. Then I will tell you in detail what we have seen in that chart of challenges. First is lack of data in India. Establishing registries for data collection by ICMR and independent hospital using BNP and anti-BNP criteria in lab required. Then persisting rheumatic heart diseases. 25% of all RSD worldwide having heart failure requires cardiac valve surgery. Then untreated congenital heart diseases. 54,000 children have heart failure due to congenital heart disease every year in India. Timely repair is required. Then increase CAD, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, CKD, increase age, preserved ejection fraction and reduce ejection fraction heart failure. So early better control required. Then increased iron deficiency anemia in India causing preserved ejection fraction and better control required by iron supplementation, which has shown to improve echocardiography parameters of myocardial performation. Sixth is inadequate reperfusion of STEMI in India. Only 58.5% receive reperfusion and delayed time presentation and lack of proper infrastructure in dealing with acute coronary syndrome have contributed to heart failure. Therefore, early thrombolytics and revascularization required. Then suboptimal guideline-based medical treatment. Majority of physicians are sensitive to the problem only once symptoms of pulmonary venous congestion set in because lack of awareness of physicians on the latest development. Doctors continue with old age practices and are unaware of new guidelines. There has been hesitance among the physicians in initiation of newer drugs which have proven mortality benefit. Education for all doctors, especially those in PSC, regarding the latest development in heart failure therapy and the need to initiate drugs with mortality benefit which will reduce readmission rate as well as mortality. Poor follow-up of clinical trials and investigations among the Indian patients due to lack of facilities in the periphery and financial cost involved in travels and investigations. Then gaps in existing evidence of device therapy. Devices used CRT and ICD with low ejection fraction less than 35% associated with a significant cost burden to budget. In clinical practice, not all patients afford it because lack of financial resources in India. Then 10th point, increased cost and underuse of intra-aortic balloon pump, mechanical cardiac support and heart transplantation. They impose extraordinary treatment costs. So because they are out of reach to most of the tertiary healthcare centers, and also there is shortage of donor hearts. Then poor financial incentives and lack of insurance coverage is main reason behind poor drug adherence in the Indian patient. Availability of low-cost generic medicine to guideline-directed therapy reduces financial burden. Improvement of public health infrastructure in rural India will help in avoiding unnecessary costs involved in investigations and travel. Lack of palliative care in India include symptoms management, emotional support and communication between patient and his family. Specific therapies like morphine, oxygen, diuretics and treatment of heart failure and hypertension. These therapies should be delivered at patient's home. The whole family should receive social support. Thus we can improve this clock of challenges in India for better heart failure control. Now, future directions. It will be only conclusion. Multiple trials have failed to show benefit of any specific treatment for preserved ejection fraction. A better understanding of pathophysiology may help us recognize new treatment targets. Some of the ongoing trials are FAIR preserved ejection fraction trial, means role of iron supplementation. Then second, MITRO preserved ejection fraction trial. Here drugs like Bendavia should be used because Bendavia significantly improved failing human mitochondrial function. Then ED5 trial, testing ivabradine for heart rate control and outcomes. Then Optim-X trial, assessing the role of high intensity interval training in these patients. Here, this has hypothesized that deconditioning might causing diastolic dysfunction. Then Socrates preserved trial, role of soluble guanine cyclase stimulation in these patients, variceal gut is being tested. Then Paragon heart failure trial, testing ERNI, angiotensin receptor neprilysin inhibitor in these patients. We should try. Then cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of mortality and morbidity in developed as well as underdeveloped countries or in developing countries. Heart failure is becoming an important contributor to death and disability in developing countries because of increasing vascular diseases as well as persistence of pre-transitional diseases like rheumatic heart disease and infectious cardiomyopathies. All efforts will be futile. All efforts will be futile till the clinicians accept, number one, that the existence of a condition called preserved ejection fraction prevails in the world. Attempt to diagnose it at an earlier stage is required. Make an active effort to control the coexistent cardiac and non-cardiac conditions also. Clinicians should realize that symptoms of dyspnea with normal ejection fraction can still be a heart failure. Heart failure is an important contributor to death and disability in developing countries because of vascular diseases, rheumatic heart diseases and infectious cardiomyopathies. This burden is likely to be large because India is having 16% of global population. India is having 25% of world's coronary heart disease burden. India is having 120 millions of hypertensives. India is having a large number of individuals with rheumatic heart diseases. In the last but not the least, take home message. What to take home message? Experts from Indian Consensus Statement on Heart Failure 2015, the 10 commandments for better heart failure care in India are following. Improving heart failure management in India. The 10 commandments for better heart failure care in India are these 10. Number 1, recognition and treatment of risk factors, that is acute rheumatic fever, coronary artery disease, diabetes mellitus, hypertension and CKD. Second, detection and treatment of iron deficiency anemia in heart failure. Third, targeting rheumatic heart disease and untreated congenital heart diseases. Fourth, establishing registries for data collection. Fifth, getting along with guidelines, medical guidelines. Sixth, increase in financial aid through government incentives and insurance coverages. Seventh, timely reperfusion in ST segment elevation MI. Eighth, timely delivery of acute heart failure therapy. Ninth, better palliative care, especially for elderly patients. And 10th, lastly, designing guidelines, consensus applicable for the Indian population. So, this was the total management, pharmacological, devices and surgical of diastolic dysfunction. Simultaneously, I have also discussed the management of systolic heart failure also. And I have taken in it newer drugs also which are even not come in the textbook. But you can see in my this CME program which I am uploading on the internet. So kindly read it on internet very well, and you have understood it very well, the management of this diastolic dysfunction, simultaneously systolic dysfunction also, and I am sure that you have understood it very well. I thank you for your kind attention. Again, thank you for your kind attention.